Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Composable Connection, where we dive into the world of composable commerce, exploring technology, companies, and the people working to create a more connected digital ecosystem. From APIs to human touchpoints, we discuss all aspects of composable architecture and how it's changing we do business. So I'm your host, James Leteric, and today I'm happy to introduce Dorian Kendal from Netlify.
Hello.
Yeah, we have a company making big investments and changes and impacts in this space. So, hey, Dorian, how's it going?
Great. It's great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. And kick this off with an icebreaker. Basic question. What's your favorite gadget or piece of technology that you can't live without?
Oh, God, that's a good one. So the gaming side of me says the Nintendo Switch.
All right, nice.
For sure. But beyond that, I mean, my iPhone.
Yeah.
It's just, I can't live without that thing. Just can't. I try.
I get it. Yeah. Mobile phones have taken over our lives.
Literally taken over.
Yeah. I also have my laptop on my list. I go everywhere with a laptop and people are like, you have your phone. What's the big deal? And I'm like, I can't. It's like a security blanket at this point. I have a laptop and a connection to the internet.
Yeah. I mean, while not my favorite, my 7-year-old lives for his iPad.
Yeah.
So I always say, like, thank you, Steve Jobs. Thank you for that.
I mean, living for it in a good way or in an obsessive way?
You know, it borders on that. I will say it is great when you go to a restaurant to be able to get through a meal.
Yeah, that's true.
But at home can be a little excessive. So we balance it.
Yeah, good deal. So I know prepping for this, we talked a lot about how there's just buzzwords flying around everywhere, how people are mistreating the terms, whether it's composable or microservices or who knows what, as these terms make it into the business world and away from technology. I think people are trying to figure out, what the heck do they mean? So I know you have a take on what is composable. Start there.
Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting. So what you often see in a lot of industries is that Gartner or other analysts come in and they coin a term. And that term either takes off or causes major amounts of confusion. There's sort of that interim stage where people hear a word, they wonder what it means. People try to do a bit of a land grab to own the word, right? So you see the word composable is a great example. You have a lot of companies who are not composable, and I'll get to sort of what that concept is in a second, but who pretend to be because that word is so new, it's so nascent. People aren't really sure what to make of it, and so there's a lot of sort of land grabbing going on. Now, composable to me it really is the future, whether we call it composable microservices, some people call it modular architecture, but really if you look at sort of web development as it is today, you look at the evolution of web development, we're really moving away from this concept of the central monolith, right? The one vendor that does everything for you, where everything is connected. So if you are a front-end developer and you want to change something as easy as a button, you need someone, a back-end engineer, a DevOps person to actually come in and help you make that change. That slows you down. Campaigns don't go live. It's really challenging, and we don't have to do that. The concept of composable, what we allow you to do is just take the best-in-class components that meet your needs, your own needs, not everybody's needs, but your own for your business and your success criteria. And you can bring those together as one platform, a platform that you design and define, and that's composable. And at Netlify, which is the company I'm honored to be the CMO of, we are the enabling function. We're the orchestration layer that allows you to bring those pieces together, aggregate them, build workflows on top of it, deployment, development, testing, decoupling of the front end and the back end, so that you can get live faster with better campaigns and quicker load times, which everybody benefits from, especially like here at Shop Talk in retail.
Yeah. And as we're at Shop Talk, I'm hearing a lot of people say, oh, I can't do composable. I can't possibly go down that road because I don't have an army of developers to build my own microservices. I don't have an army of DevOps ready to keep the uptime going. So I need to go with something old, something monolith so that someone else can manage it for me. And I have an opinion on that, but what's your opinion on that take?
I have many opinions, as we talked about in the past. We sometimes, I feel, we have this like security blanket when we have like one vendor, it's one throat to choke, right? For lack of a better expression. And we look at that, we say, well, I know what I know. It's a known, right? And I know that I have this, maybe it's not ideal, but that nervousness, the unknown scares me a bit. Well, the challenge is these central monoliths, they're hurting you more than they're helping you. You think that they're actually great for your business because it is, again, one vendor to deal with. You can't get campaigns live. Security is a challenge. It's a huge burden on your DevOps team because you still need them. In a world of composable, you really get away from a lot of those DevOps rules because you actually enable and empower the people on the front end to deploy themselves under governance rules that you build into a platform like Netlify. So I think there's a fallacy there. I think you have detriments to the business when you stay on the monolith, and I think they are definitely outweigh any of the sort of nervousness or processes that come into play. So having multiple component pieces.
Yeah, and this term is new for a lot of people, but it's not brand new. It's been around. People have been doing it, and as a result, it's getting easier and easier. I look at my tech experience. When I first started, I had to build a server and manage it in a closet and go from there. And then, went to a rack server where you're still managing the server. And now with things like Netlify, I don't have to manage a server. I don't have to manage anything. You just deploy your application and it's going to be running and it's going to be running well. I think the same thing's happening with Composable, where the people that started early on had to do a lot of work. But we're getting to that point now that it's getting a broad adoption where you don't have to do as much work.
Yeah. And I mean, this is where, companies like Netlify, where we build in integrations, an ecosystem with tech partners. So we're agnostic. We will not tell a company in certain terms you have to go with one content management system or another. We have multiple that we partner with. And it really is, I go back to my comment earlier, it really is what's best for your business and your use case, not what's best from a sort of a overall sort of assumption or conclusion around the entire industry. And so, Netlify, we've built out all of these APIs to connect really seamlessly with so many of our tech partners, which takes a lot of that work that you're right. Initially, when Contentful first came around as one of the first headless CMSs to connect it, that was a lot of work for your dev team. We've taken that away.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the back end with data movement, Alaska Path made huge strides with integrations and Integration Hub to let data move behind the scenes so that it's available in each vendor to expose through the APIs and through your API gateway. Talking about APIs and API orchestration layers, I know there was big news earlier in the year on that, if we want to get into it.
Without going too deep, we did acquire a company called Gatsby. Gatsby, they've been trailblazers, not just in the world of frameworks. They're mainly known for their framework, Gatsby.js. But that's not the whole story. They have been really amazing at sort of pushing forward this idea of a content cloud, of the idea of taking multiple content sources and being able to actually federate them into one that can actually be pushed out to the front end. So whereas Netlify has traditionally played on the sort of the front end side of things, with the acquisition of Gatsby, it actually allows us to not just serve developers on the front end, but it actually allows us to talk to the architects that are making those core decisions, driving the effectiveness and efficiency of their platform.
Yeah, I saw that headline and said Netlify acquires Gatsby specifically to dive deeper into composable architecture. And then I went to the forums, to Reddit, to everywhere else, and everyone was talking about Gatsby as a front-end framework and what's going on here. But I keyed in specifically to what Gatsby's doing, what you guys are doing now with that API aggregation. I think being able to take all those APIs and pull them together into a unified experience for your developers is really going to make projects move faster.
Yeah, and I think that in multiple ways. And of course, there's some things that I can't really discuss today, but sort of stay tuned in the next few months. Let's wait for session 2. But what's really interesting, over years, Gatsby built up an incredibly, just a great collection of plugins, right? A really impressive collection of plugins that work with their content cloud, but to your point, really helps things accelerate. And we're just going to take it a step further. We were really clear. We did not buy Gatsby for a framework. That was not of interest. It came with it. The great part about us getting the framework, though, is that we now can support it, just like we do with 11T and Solid.js. So it becomes part of a collection of open source frameworks that we will work and strive as hard as possible with the community to make sure that it thrives.
Yeah, love Solid.js too. Just talking with people last Friday at an event about Solid.js that didn't know about it, but it's a great option if people are looking for those front-end frameworks and trying to explore outside just the basic Create React app. We talked a little bit earlier about DevOps. Bring that back around. I think DevOps is still a relatively new term. People are getting a handle on it, but smaller teams can be a little scared away. But I see a lot of movement to help in that area. So I wanted to know if you could expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about DevOps, right, you think about the software development lifecycle, right? And it has been a critical function when you have a central monolith, something, one system that connects your front end and your back end where deployment is actually controlled by a separate team. I dealt with this myself. I was at a company where we deployed twice a week. If I found something as a marketer that I wanted to change at 8:30 in the morning Pacific on a Thursday, I had to wait for that change to roll out till Tuesday. And that was because we had to have governance through a DevOps team, because all of the management and maintenance of deployment was on that team specifically. In this sort of new world of composable architecture, where you have someone like a Netlify, you have this orchestration layer, again, we allow the front-end developers to deploy themselves, of course, built on governance. So we build governance and security into our platform to make sure that you're not having, bad agents come in. You're not having stuff deployed that shouldn't be. So that still exists, but it's built into the platform itself. And what it does, which is really amazing, is it allows for rapid deployment, right? The CI/CD. And what's great about that is you find, as you look at companies that are using Netlify, that they're deploying on average 28 times a day.
Wow.
So if you think about 2 times a week, 28 times a day, that's a dramatic improvement. And if you're in, especially something like e-commerce, the ability to continuously deploy, it's a massive game changer for you. And it's a huge leg up on competition that's still on the central monoliths.
Yeah, I know at Elastic Path we're deploying constantly. I can't keep up with the Slack alerts of new releases, but we're a big org focused on building technology. I feel like this system that Netlify has, it supports all of the big orgs as well, obviously, but it also makes it so simple from what it used to be. You're no longer building all of these complex pipelines trying to keep your Kubernetes up and running. Instead, you're simplifying it down so that everyone can take advantage of these advancements.
We met with a company yesterday, interestingly, who did not know what the word composable was. So that was an education lesson that I've had to give multiple times.
Well, the spell check does always try and correct it.
It's a composable. Yes, that's true. But it was interesting in talking with this individual, as we talked about composability, he talked about the size of his engineering team. Now, they do a really strong e-com business. It's actually really impressive revenue given their size, but it's only 4 people in their engineering team. And when you talk about the ability to remove one full-time DevOps person in a constrained environment, which, we somewhat are at this point, the ability to use that money to pay for another developer, because you don't need that heavy, reliance on an actual individual running DevOps. It's very freeing for small businesses.
Yeah, I see a lot of this as don't reinvent the wheel of efficiencies that are gained by putting pieces together as opposed to building it all yourself or having to dive into some archaic code. And these efficiencies come out as, hey, you can take that employee and focus them on something to make your company great.
Yeah.
Instead of table stakes at this point.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that the wonderful thing about this new ecosystem is you have companies that are spending tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to be the best in that space, right? So companies in the CMS space are spending a ton of money to be the best in the search and discovery and digital asset management and back-end data and analytics. Let them spend their money and be the best and take advantage of their R&D and focus on what matters most to you, which is your business, growing your business and your revenue versus some of these component pieces that other people, it's their business. Let them be the best and leverage that.
Yeah, you can't have one great product and then carry a whole suite into the contract anymore. Yep. Every single thing you offer needs to stand on its own. So we have multiple products at this point, but they can all be bought individually. So if you don't like one of them, you throw it out and bring in someone else. And we have to compete at the highest level where that's exactly what they're going to do. And it's right down to little things like, hey, I don't like your promotion system, so I'm going to bring in a promotions engine on top of your cart. And you need to have that interoperability and you need to compete. So it is definitely changing the game and the way software is sold at this point.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really interesting is that it puts the onus on the component provider, the business who's providing the solution, to always be ahead of the game, to work hard for their customers, to make sure that they're bringing forward features that people are actually asking for. What you often see with a lot of these sort of monoliths, these centralized systems, is that they often build features that are what they want to do, that's right for them as their business versus what's right for the customer. And in a world where you have so many options, the onus is on the provider to actually have the best in class solution that really meets the needs of their market.
Yeah, it removes all that sense of lock-in. Continually brands I've talked to that said, hey, I would love to switch off of this really big system. But they said if I swap out this one piece, my contract value is actually going to go up because they've locked me in with some kind of discounting for owning it all. Yeah. So they can't start that process of pulling it apart and replacing piece by piece, even though in the end, it's going to give a better system.
Yeah, I mean, I liken it to, and we all love our cable TV provider.
Oh, yeah.
Them. And if you harken back to the days where they would bundle, I think they still do today, although most of us have cut the cord. But when you think about that bundling, when you removed a component from the bundle, your price actually went up because the bundle offer you got was predicated on having those pieces as part of the bundle. You disband the bundle and suddenly everything's more expensive. And I think we see that with these central monoliths on the software side where, they want you to use multiple products in their pricing models. They're really built with themselves in mind versus the needs of the customer.
Yeah, I saw a post online, clearly some FUD from the cable industry showing the cost comparison of them with all of their channels. And then if you bought every single streaming service, oh, look, it costs more. And man, the comment section just attacked it. They're like, yes, but with streaming, there's no commercials. I'm getting a better service for each layer, and I don't have to take them all if I don't need them. Yeah. I can pick and choose the ones that make sense to me, and it's a perfect analogy for Composable.
Yeah, I mean, nobody picks every single streaming service. It is a definite mental leap to get to that place. But don't put it past the cable companies.
Yeah, and nobody picks every single vendor in the Composable stack. I was being asked yesterday, what different types of things are there? And you give the foundational items. You've got your commerce engine with cart and products. You've got your search, your content. But then as I started going through all the marketing items and the add-ons and the startups that we've been talking to about video, commerce, and so on, the list is just endless. There is no end to what you could bring into the stack if that's what makes sense to your business.
Absolutely. Which, back to your previous question around that sort of nervousness of moving off of a monolith, it can be very daunting, right? If you're looking, there are so many providers out there that the marketing technology ecosystem is super vast, which requires people like us to be a little bit more prescriptive based on what we see in the field and actually partner with potential customers or existing customers to really reflect on what we're seeing, what our partners are doing and where they could benefit. Really just cut through the noise for them because it really is a challenge. If you're looking at everything that's out there without any sort of direction or any help, I can see why people stay with their monoliths. You can see why that happens.
Yeah. Have you seen the relationship between these SaaS companies, these API first companies, and the customers changing over time?
In which sense? Just to clarify.
Just in general, compared to an old school software system where maybe they're managing it for you, maybe they're installing it for you, to now having multiple vendors in place and having to, it's no longer selling software, it's selling a relationship over multiple years. So I don't know if you've noticed any changes in how, that relationship works as opposed to just the initial sale.
Yeah, I mean, again, this really is a continuous conversation between a vendor and the customer. Whereas before, right, we know that you'd sign a contract, there'd be an implementation team, and then they'd go away and you were done. In this day and age, you get a customer success advisor, somebody that helps you through the process. Renewals, in a world of composability, the level of lock-in is so much less than it is in a monolith. Right? In a monolith, they stand back and say, listen, you're not going anywhere. You're not going to replace this entire thing. This is probably a 5-year horizon for them. So maybe in year 4, they'll call you up again and have a conversation. But when you look at composability, what's really great is it actually puts more power back in the hands of the customer, the user, because there are options and you're not locked into something. You can swap out components in your platform. It could be a little bit painful at times, but it actually just gives you the power to feel like, hey, unless this service is actually meeting my needs continuously, I might reconsider. And that pushes us as service providers to really just do our best.
Yeah. And there's definitely a hurdle for people to get through. The sounds, when you first hear it, it sounds very complex. I have to work with 4 or 5 different companies. I have to worry about how they merge together. But when I notice companies start getting into the final result, they see the benefits that come out. Some of those you mentioned earlier that you don't want to wait twice a week for changes to take place. I see the entire market going to an event-based approach where things are live. The other thing that I see happening as people move is that it's not quite as complex as they thought it was. And I think it's due to companies like Netlify and Elasticpath making pushes to simplify. Do you think there's anything else that's making it less complex, or is it mostly that push?
Yeah, no, I think it's multiple things. So I think definitely, the work that we've done with our partner ecosystems that we've created and with the tech that we've built via our APIs and our relationships, that definitely makes it a lot easier. I think it's also, we're starting to see the stories come out. We're starting to see the proof points come out, like real proof points, not, I hate to say this, 'cause I'm a marketer, but not marketing collateral, but actual experiences and stories from customers that have found just rapid improvements, just dramatic improvements in what they're doing. I mean, we constantly talk to our customers who we do these guided pilots for, a proof of concept, and they just see that they're going live with a campaign in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, which in the past would have taken 6 months. And I think the other part of it that's really helping is that agencies are starting to move towards composable. So if you look at years past, service integrators, all those guys, all those teams, the agencies were really focused on these monolithic approaches. We're starting to see that kind of siphon off, where a lot of these agencies, the percentage of time that they're spending on composable architecture is really dramatically improving. And I think that helps when you have a vibrant industry built around implementation of these approaches, and you have agencies that are actually evangelizing on behalf of the concept. That really helps push things forward much faster.
And the agencies are seeing benefit too. They have to learn a little bit about how composable architecture works and how the pieces get put together. There's plenty to help them along that road, but they're finding that they don't have to dig into archaic code. They don't have to learn an entire software suite. Instead, they just have to know how to call an API. And we all know how to call an API, whether it's a REST API or a GraphQL API. The documentation's there. And now agencies can hire developers regardless of what coding language they want to write in, regardless of their past experience. Hey, you know how to code, you know how to call an API, you're going to be able to help on this project. So I think their training needs are getting smaller, which means they can move faster and that they can augment that skill set that much faster.
Absolutely.
So looking at what's going on at Netlify, is there anything interesting that you want to talk about? Any big movements that you can discuss with us here today? Or just any software that you really think is innovative that you want to call out?
Yeah, I mean, I would say on the Netlify side, we really are focused on security. It's been a really big push for us. As you look at, we talked a bit about DevOps, and there is a little bit of a nervousness that people have around, developers deploying on their own. The governance that we build in the security features, we're really proud of that. Really taking a hard focus on that, building in different directory functions and SSO, and just giving people the ability to really control the internal experience for their engineers. So that's pretty exciting. Again, loving what we're doing with Gatsby and the Gatsby Cloud, the product formerly known as Valhalla. That's super exciting. The more that we can actually enable people beyond just developers, expand to architects, excites me a lot. And then we're partnering, we have a company called StackBit that we partner with. And that's kind of near and dear to my heart because as a marketer, I don't want all of my marketing team to be trained on how to use a back-end CMS. And so what happens today is you have a CMS, you have a couple of your devs on the team that are trained on how to use it, how to build landing pages, for example, and then they become the bottleneck because everybody goes to them. A tool like StackBit actually allows you to do front-end design work and deployment if you're a marketer without actually having to go into the back-end CMS. So you rapidly expand the number of people that can actually get their job done when they need to get it done versus being sort of beholden to individuals that actually have the appropriate training.
Right. So that StackBit, is that something you're using both internally and offering out?
We are.
Nice. I assume you've seen good improvements on the workflows.
We have, and really, again, there's something very exciting and empowering as a marketer. You can take your vision and bring it to life, and work with your design team, and actually put something forward that you can stand behind and say, actually, I did this, right? And I think that's just an exciting thing that StackBit brings to the table.
And it's not constrained to the format that the tool wants you to go in. Yeah. it really opens up the doors for what you guys can create.
Exactly.
Yeah, very cool. And unpacking that security bit, it's great that you're leaning in. I think a lot of times it's an afterthought, especially for smaller startups, but it is paramount in today's day and age where you can get hacked all the time. So it's really nice to hear the focus on security, strong focus on security as well. And a lot of people don't see the business benefit of SSO, high security, because they're looking at it as prevention. I want to prevent a hack. But in a composable world, I think SSO is paramount to make workflow work as well. Everyone listening.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, if you think about the monolith, I keep going back to this term monolith, but this security that's built in there, if you do one thing on the front end, it can cause everything to collapse on the back end, right? So the decoupling of the front end and the back end, immediately you gain a security advantage because you've isolated those two parts of your web platform. But when you look at the front end, it is really important that you have security guardrails built in, because beyond just sort of DDoS attacks, there's just things happen. Right?
Yeah.
Things just happen. If you're a small organization and you don't have people that are monitoring that all the time, that's what we can do on your behalf.
Very nice.
One of the things that I'm really excited about is, as we look at this current environment, and we look at how important it is to have efficient growth, just how this concept of composability is really starting to take off. Gartner did say that about 70% of companies will be implementing a composable platform approach to web development within the next year, which is amazing. But people are actually finally starting to see the real benefits. Now, what's incumbent on us is to educate. So we just did a big campaign called Commerce Goes Composable. And in that campaign, we started to talk about what is composability? How can it help you if you're running headless commerce, composable commerce? And so I think what I'm excited about is really getting out there and helping to educate this concept, because the benefits are just massive. Again, 20 deploys a day versus 2 a week is game changing.
Another topic that I feel like it doesn't get the attention it deserves. It had some buzz, but it deserves more is the edge computing. When serverless came out, all the programmers were like, hey, it's just someone else's computer. But in the long term, serverless functions have really taken off and shown true benefit. Edge, they're saying the same thing. Oh, it's just a lot of computers. But I think there's a lot more too with edge computing.
Yeah.
So didn't know if you have any insights there and how many people are leveraging it. Seen benefits coming out of it already.
Yeah. So it is a relatively new concept, although it is adopted by most, if not all, of our enterprise customers. Edge is great because it's just a next level possibility around personalization, where you're bringing the compute closer to the user, and by doing that, you can glean more information and actually return to them more meaningful content, catalog of products, and so in that case, Edge, while new instead of a newer concept, is really, I think, the next step in delivering true fast personalization. So you're not always having to go back to all your back-end systems to run queries, to pull information. It's already there. It's close to the user.
Yeah, it helps with that personalization aspect. It really helps with all of your performance needs now that the front end and back end's decoupled. I've been playing with deploying my front end to the edge for pre-compilation for the SSR rendering, and having it on the edge, the response time are much, much faster than having it in one single server somewhere. And I mean, my favorite part is I don't have to think about scaling anymore.
Yeah.
You just deploy it to Netlify, you have it out there, and you're like, it'll scale. I know it's not going to go down for Black Friday.
Yeah.
Really.
And it's dramatic. I mean, I was reading some statistics the other day just around, site abandonment, cart abandonment. And what you see, just even 2 seconds page load time lag, even just 2 seconds, cause a massive drop off of users. And so as you get, if speed is of the essence here, if speed is one of the most important metrics to really understand how you can get to the end of a shopping cart experience, the edge helps you get there because it makes page load times that much faster. It gets information in the hands of the user that much faster versus, to your point, going back to one central server and trying to run some queries and returning that information from Australia when someone's in.
Absolutely. Speed is a feature at this point. Not considering it, why bother with all the other fancy features that we can add in. It's not fast if people don't want to use the website.
Yeah, and you think about yourself. I mean, you bring it back to your own experience surfing the web, right? I mean, COVID was a very interesting time for all of us. We were all online. And I don't know about you, but I had so many times that I would be on a site and just be waiting. And what did I do? I clicked off. I'm like, well, you have this trade-off decision of, is this time that I'm going to wait worth the content that I'm going to get in return? And so many times, even to this day, I find myself sitting there saying, I was on the fence maybe about this. I had curiosity around what I would get, but that curiosity does not outweigh the amount of time that it's taking to get that information, to understand whether this actually fulfills that curiosity or if it was a waste of time. And so often, you find yourself in that very quick trade-off decision and you make a move. Oftentimes that move is to click away, which you never want.
Yeah, I had that experience yesterday. I was trying to load the event map up, and it was so slow that I just wandered around and found the room before it finally loaded.
Yeah, you have a problem with page load times when the preference is to walk.
Yes.
When you're actually physically going to look for something because the page load time is that slow.
And in the website's defense, there is some really bad Wi-Fi going on here. 10,000 people sharing it. But it just shows how important it is to optimize. Just every little bit counts. Yeah, so as you look forward, we talked about how we got here to Composable, what's going on right now. But as you look forward, do you have any predictions on what's really going to change, what we should be looking at?
Yeah, I think a couple things are going to happen. So one of the trends that we're starting to see is some of these component providers are starting to create almost monoliths themselves. So I'm really hoping we don't go down that path, right? You see some companies are introducing their own front-end clouds. They're introducing other sort of orchestration pieces. So I'm really hoping that we don't, in an effort to get away from a monolith, replace it with a different monolith program. So that concerns me a little bit, that trend, because it really goes against sort of the nature and the essence of what composability is and what it could do for the web. What gets me very excited, though, is something that we talk about, which is the composition platform. So how do you actually take the full end-to-end components from the architect all the way to the marketer, take all of those and build in one sort of streamlined platform around that? Again, we call it the composition platform at this point. But that's, to me, the idea of enabling all those functions, architects, developers, marketers, in a way that they never were before, and empowering them and giving them the opportunity to actually have the autonomy to build the best platform and services and campaigns for the business. To me, that's really exciting.
Yeah, and backing up to your first point about let's not make more monoliths out of these systems. Acquisitions are clearly going to happen. Companies are going to grow, especially the successful ones. But what I see is everything is API-based. Everything is event-based. We have webhooks. We have access that we didn't normally have without diving into the code. So as they make these acquisitions, it's going to be a business choice. Technology is not going to create the lock-in unless they make the business choice to make a contract lock-in or rebuild it to force that lock-in or not let other people integrate. So if the tech side supports it, is there any way for the tech team to influence what the business is going to do?
I think so. I think there's, business is business, and in a very crowded environment, which we do have today. I mean, it is quite crowded out there with the tech that's coming out. You always question, is it a service or is it just a feature for some of these companies? Mm-hmm. But it is proliferating. And of course, whenever you have proliferation like this, then comes consolidation, right? We always see this. So it's tried and true pattern where more solutions come to the market and they get gobbled up and everything sort of consolidates. So I think in that sense, it really is on the users, on the customers to say what they want, right? And what's a showstopper for them, why they're using a certain product. But even more than that, it's incumbent on service providers like ourselves to really make the case of why it makes sense. Because you might buy another company and aggregate and bring it into your business, but it doesn't mean that people are going to buy it from you. So having that as a lens, because again, without a lock-in, change is possible. So making sure that what you're doing, what you're buying makes sense and actually solves a real problem for your users. If it doesn't fall in that bucket, then it's all for naught, because your customers, they're either going to decide not to use that functionality, or if you try to force it on them, they'll probably move to another solution provider, of which we know that there are many.
We just launched at Elastic Path an integration hub, and it's all about moving data around behind the scenes to make sure all these services have the data they need. And the first thought was, great, this is going to be wonderful for integrating Elastic Path with all the other services. But immediately, senior leadership team said, no, this is for integrating anyone to anyone, and that's important. They need to use it with their existing system, even if they don't want to buy other pieces. And they need to use it if they want to get off of our system, if that's what they're looking to do. Because once you start thinking about lock-in, I think you've lost the essence of what we're trying to do, which is to work with the customer, work as separate companies, but together to make our customers, make more money and be productive.
Yeah. I think there's, in this market, I think the idea of partnership is so important. You really are not, you're not, just a solution provider or a service provider. You have to be a partner, because as that business is growing, you need to be there with them and understand their needs. So it can influence your roadmap. So it can influence your success programs that you're doing with them. And to your point, if somebody really wants to get off your platform, there's no better form of goodwill out there than to say, you know what? Okay.
Yeah.
If it makes sense.
Help.
Yeah. Like the idea, I don't know if you've ever been through this, but I was at a company where we were moving payment providers, and the hell that we were put through trying to just get extracts from the legacy system we were moving off of all the credit card information and the tokens. It was horrible. And it really was a terrible experience. And, from then on, whenever anybody would bring up this one provider, I'd say, don't do it. Because if you ever have different needs, they're going to make your life very challenging. And so, sometimes people outgrow our solution. Sometimes they want to move to something else. It's incumbent on us to make that a pleasant experience, because they'll talk about it. They'll tell others, right?
Yeah.
Because we're partners. We're not just sellers.
Put goodwill out there, and it's going to come back. Speaking of partners, we met in person for the first time for this recording, but you've been close to the rest of the team, and you've met with our partner manager. You've been downstairs talking to people at the booth, and it just shows the strength of these partnerships and these relationships. They go way beyond the surface level. And I think you're right. It's core to making sure we can help our customers and respond effectively to their issues. They don't always know where the issue is. So by having these connections, we can help identify it and point them to the right person in their stack, or to just have the conversation outright and say, hey, we need to fix it.
Absolutely. And I did have a chance to get my Yeti mug.
Oh, nice.
From your booth. So thank you for that. But it is important that the ecosystem is critical to the success of this march towards modern web development. We're not going to get there if we don't play nice together. And if we don't build an ecosystem that is users first, we have massive monolithic companies that do not love what we're doing and are very well funded and have very high values. But collectively, we can have much more of an influence if we work well together. And that's so key for us. I know it is for Elastic Path. I know we are part of your starter program, component piece of that. And it's just critical to the success, because we're all invested in the overall success of this movement. It's incumbent on us to do it together.
And we do it from a business perspective. We do it to help our customers, and we're doing it from a technology perspective that now things are way more interoperable than they've ever been before in the history of e-commerce. It's no longer about, if they're not pre-integrated, I need to run away scared, because you can build out integrations fast. You can build them and have them hosted by companies that can handle the uptime and everything that you need for keeping it running long term.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we go, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think the big thing is, for anyone who doesn't know what Composable is, take a few moments and do your research. It really is amazing what it can bring to your business. Again, we talk a lot at Netlify about rapid deployment, the idea of deploying more, shipping faster. For me as a marketer, massive. It's huge to people to be out there. We're in a very competitive environment, and that leg up that you get from composability is huge. And one of the sort of concerns, or call it somewhat of an objection point, that we get from people is, doing that hard cut over, that's too much. I don't have the resources, or that scares me, or this is just going to, we just don't have it in place, the skills, et cetera, to do that jump. And so one of the things that we're really working on is helping you go headless with what you have, if it's your monolith. So let's say WordPress, which, by the way, WordPress is still about 43% of all websites. It's still massive. Maintaining it is a pain. But the idea is...
Securing it is a pain.
Security is even bigger pain. But the idea of, with composability, it's not an all or nothing thing. It can be a gradual process. And having the right partner, like an Elastic Path or a Netlify, to help guide you through it makes it a lot less daunting. But it doesn't have to be this huge cutover. It can be a gradual process. But the objective is getting to a point where, your Valentine's Day campaign, it's ready to ship before Easter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add to that make sure you're learning from the right people when you're researching this. Because as you said, composable is the buzzword. It's the word du jour. And everyone's using it, whether they are or they're not. They're just tagging on, making sure that they're in those search results. So it's good to highlight the companies that we did today. LastPath, Netlify, but also Contentful and Algolia and all the other ones that have been mentioned, and call out that they're a great place to start because they're actually leading the way. They're not just following on the buzzword trend.
Absolutely. And we at Netlify, we feel sort of a responsibility to help educate on what composability is, because we are this orchestration layer, because we are the company that brings solutions together and helps deliver the output that front-end developers can use to build their campaigns and sites and pages and apps. And so we do have thoughts based on different use cases of who great partners are. And so we can direct to partners that are right for you. Elastic Path can also.
Yeah. And the great thing is, someone always asks, well, why don't you just tell me what they are right now? And we can't, because we work with multiple people, and it's about, hey, what's right for you? Tell me your requirements first, and then we'll point you to the right person. And that's part of that best for me breed of software that's coming out.
Yeah, I think that the great trend there is we're moving, hopefully, away from a kind of framework-defined infrastructure approach to more of a business problem/solution approach to how we build our architecture. And that, to your point, unless we know what the business problem is that you're trying to solve for, it's very hard to be prescriptive out of the gate. And we shouldn't be. Right? We should be listening first and evaluating based on business needs and then moving forward, versus, in the past of just saying, hey, pick a framework and build around it. That's the approach we need to move away from.
Yeah. Or to the developers, pick a software and figure out how it works.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. 100%.
Instead, we'll help you architect a solution that makes sense for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. This was a great conversation. I appreciate you taking time at a shop talk to talk with me today.
Absolutely.
This was wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.